wrestling with wrestling's past and present.
How old were you?
I was -3.
JR is trying to contain Jim Ross.
McFlurry,
It's Mick Foley. Do you see any of the aggro crag? Was any of that left over?
No, unfortunately not.
No?
I'm taking some of that home.
Definitely not is the barn burner that Leaf Cassidy and Tiger thing was, but we'll leave that there.
We digress.
God, I hope that storyline ends soon.
And 6 to 8 weeks later, they mail you a freaking magnet.
Yep. You may know him as the Red Rooster.
Is it still real to me? Damn it!
He kept making out with his wife. It was weird. So then, I'm waiting for them to put the Selena Vega on a pole match.
And I mean, Big E's got Whale performing in his entrance, so I feel like
Wale.
Wale. I don't listen to. Okay, well, I don't listen to him, so I apologize to Wale.
This is in the mail, my good sir. No, it wasn't. Paul.
I feel like Vince is just gonna have them team together and be like, have them called Woo Bro. Like they're just gonna be the Woo Bros. Like, anyway.
Giving us a reason to come here and listen to ourselves talk.
Absolutely,
and then you can listen to us too.
Strap on and balls, only on Wrestling Past and Present.
This is Gangrel, the Vampire Warrior, and you're listening to Wrestling where Wrestling's Past and Present.
This is Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. I'm Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And we are once again saddled with putting this show together without Tim. As luck would have it, lately life has been awfully busy for that poor fellow. I've actually, it's a bit of an insult to Dr. Tom Prichard, but I actually dubbed him Dr. Tim Prichard for Bruce always doing remixes and not being able to record. And actually Tim brought that up in our group chat that he felt like Bruce, so I thought that was pretty funny.
Did he get a job in Connecticut we didn't know about or something? Or
yeah, are you working for Vince? Yeah, I mean it's something about this time of year too, because last year at this time I was indisposed, so I guess I really can't complain. I mean, it is what it is. We kind of rag on him and stuff, and obviously the shows aren't the same without the 3-man booth that we have become accustomed to, but we will push on. We're not going to do any remix episodes anytime soon, knock on wood. We will, even if it's only one of us BSing, I think we will put a show out first before we ever do a remix episode. Sorry, Bruce.
God, please don't do that. Can you imagine if it's just one of us rambling on for 20 minutes? Our listeners would just whoosh right down to the ground.
Hey, if it were me, my mom would probably love it.
Thank you, Linda.
But anyways, we're here for episode 108, where it's all about Armageddon 2002. I'm without spoiling any of the show, I was actually pleasantly surprised with this show. I mean, on paper, it looked really good, and I think it lived up to it for the most part.
Yeah, it holds up really well. I think, too, because 2002 was just such a great year in terms of storyline for WWE. Without spoiling, like you said, you're going to have a long-term story resolution of Triple H, Shawn Michaels. That was pretty much the summer of 2002 is now culminating Armageddon. So that's sweet. And like you said, on paper, you're like, okay, it should be decent. But then watching, you're like, this is when WWE was exciting. It was entertaining because the matches had meaning. There was good wrestling. There was some clunky shit. There was some really inappropriate shit that would not fly nowadays. But you were sports entertained, to steal a phrase.
That's a really good way to sum it up. In all actuality, I mean, you look at just the pure star power on this show. I mean, just in the first match alone, not the dark match, but I mean, you have Booker T, Goldust, Chris Jericho, Christian, the Dudley Boys, and Lance Storm, William Regal. I mean, when you can start a show off that way, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but when you start the show off that way, we know that TNA has a way of starting off with multi-people matches, and it's kind of a cluster, but like, listen to the names in that match alone. I think Lance Storm and Regal are two of the most underrated people and underappreciated people, especially Lance Storm, in probably the whole business ever. So, I definitely I was very impressed. There wasn't much clunkiness or clusterfuckery as we sometimes come across. I mean, there was some, but it definitely didn't let me down anyways, put it that way.
It was a well done, essentially fatal 4-way tag match. I think the elimination style helps because it kind of becomes less convoluted, and they work together well. There were some funny points where, you had Goldust essentially working with the enemy because his storyline was he felt like the weak link of the group, the team that would become Book Dust. And the chemistry was great because he kind of looked like he was trying. Like the AEW has the Orange Cassidy, he will try. That's what it was like. Goldust, like he's gonna try, and he ended up being reliable and helping secure the win. And it was a good match. I mean, it was kind of weird that the Dudleys were the first team out, in my opinion, but I think it led to the shock factor. So, even knowing the result, you were kind of like, oh, I wonder if Booker T and Goldust can really pull this off. You knew they did, but it was cool to have that feeling, that storytelling in the match.
Right. So let's start at the very beginning. They had a heat match with Jeff Hardy and D'Lo Brown, just under 5 minutes. I assume this was a decent match. I mean, D'Lo Brown's another one of those names of someone who is incredibly underrated, I think, in the business. And Jeff Hardy is Jeff Hardy. I don't know what more you can say. It's definitely coming out now that it wasn't so much Jeff having demons and whatnot come back up, but more or less it seems like he was just burned out. It seems like he needed a change, and I think he used some of that to his advantage in getting released. I think that he kind of played WWE a little bit and played up that he needed help and then refused, and then it was easy for WWE to just say, well, bye. And he was probably like, thank God, like, just thank you, I'm done.
No, and that's why, to echo what you said last week, we can't jump the gun and just assume one thing or the other, because we're never going to know the true story. But based on Jeff Hardy's interviews and Matt Hardy's interviews and Rebby, who is Matt's wife, and she doesn't hold back. When he went through issues before, she was blasting him. She does not like his wife. Matt's distanced himself, but they're all rallying around him. So even if he is going through something, we don't know what it is. But obviously, if they're supporting him, it's something they think he can get through. So as a person, good for him for getting the help. And you know what? If WWE wanted to cut their losses, then I hope he can find employment elsewhere because he still deserves to work.
Well, and to be fair, the times we've seen and heard of him from him, he's sounded fine. He hasn't sounded. It's literally just seems like it was time for him to move on from WWE. And like I said, to me, it feels like he kind of put one over on them by more or less seeming to be in more trouble than he really was. Maybe he was starting to go down a path or whatever and whatnot. But I think he also played up a little bit of it to get released because he was just sick of his shit. I think that's the easiest way to sum it up. From what we've heard and what we've seen so far, he seems very clear-minded. He has some actual music shows coming up and stuff like that. And no offense, if the guy was all kinds of screwed up, I don't think he'd be doing music. I don't think, it would be working out well. And you'd be able to tell when he interviewed with people or talked with certain people if he was, screwed up. We'd know because we've seen it multiple times, unfortunately. So this is a different Jeff Hardy from what we've seen. And that's a good thing. Like I said, maybe there was a few things that were starting to, more or less show up a little bit. But I don't think it was to the extent that WWE made it sound like when they said he refused to go get treatment.
And, that to me, that's a generalized term to be the last point on is, Sean Waltman had a good tweet out about that. Not every situation requires rehab. And, he knows, and I know people can say, well, they don't always know. And I'm not saying anything for or against, but if he felt and his family felt that rehab wasn't the best situation of the chance, then you can respect that choice, because we can't control the people. But we don't know. It could have been one of the situations where maybe he, like you said, maybe some things were compiling and he was kind of just messed up and he just felt, hey, it was a rough night, but, I'm going to go home to my support system, my wife, my kids. I'm going to go home, get my head clear, because people are humans. They're always in recovery. You got to give the guy a chance too. You can't just assume that he had a slip up that suddenly he's, Victory Road 2011. That's not fair to the dude either.
No, and I mean, I think it's somewhat comical in a way, the timing of the Broken Skull sessions with Stone Cold, too, because he seemed very clear-minded there, too. And it didn't seem like he was, out of it or anything. And I'm sure that travel would have been something that would have triggered him. Obviously, traveling all over the place is a very easy way to fall back into those patterns. So I just, I'm glad that, it seems to be at least under control. He seems clear-minded. It seems to not have any of the issues cropping up like a lot of people at first thought. And if there is an issue, it doesn't seem to be anywhere near what a lot of people thought it was. So I'm glad that I can personally say I'm glad that I waited to see.
Well,
Because I didn't want to be one of those people that, crapped on the guy when he didn't do anything to deserve it. So
that's just the problem. Like in general, we talk on the show. We try to use our platform to, talk about the show, current events, etc. But like with social media and think before you post people, because some of the things people post, like Roland brought up last week, someone with a TikTok comment saying leukemia is going to beat Roman Reigns, things like that. I've seen some horrible things about the Jeff Hardy thing. It doesn't take much to just not type something. It's not funny. Ooh, you got a few likes on it, but it doesn't make you a good person. If you want to tweet something, you can tweet support at him. Or if you're disturbed, you don't want like the situation, guess what? Scroll by. It's not hard to scroll by something you don't like. Because trust me, there's a lot of things I don't like. When I see the New York Giants win, I scroll by. There's things that you can scroll by.
Well, and it takes a bigger person to scroll by than it does to be, a keyboard warrior and hide behind the characters on a keyboard or on a cell phone. So I think that's the biggest thing too, is that, unless you know for sure, I mean, that is kind of the Meltzer dynamic too. Like, unless you know for sure, just don't say it.
No, I agree. Well, I suppose we probably should get back into this show before we go into a 30-minute diatribe and Tim kills us for having to edit it.
Get a little sidetracked there, but we
kind of relevant because you were talking about Jeff Hardy.
Yeah, I mean, and it was about, like I said, a 5-minute match. It was on Heat, so it probably was a decent match. Anyways, we kind of spoiled the first match a little bit. We had a fatal 4-way elimination match for the World Tag Team Championship. It was the team of Booker T and Goldust defeating Chris Jericho and Christian, who were the champions coming in. Also in the match for the Dudley Boys and Lance Storm and William Regal. So, like Mongo said, a little bit interesting to see the Dudley Boys go out first. But then, I mean, within 10 seconds, Regal and Storm were out right after that. So it essentially became a regular tag match for about the last 10 minutes of the match.
No, it was good because when it was down to the final four, it was very well done. They had a lot of chemistry. Jericho going for the cheap shots, towards the end where he's trying to hit him with the title. Christian just kind of interfering at inappropriate times, and the double team maneuvers they were doing, like when they were doing like the double bookend, things like that. It was cool. I thought it flowed really well. They told a good story. Like the underdogs got the titles from, essentially the two heels, and it also kind of helps set up, Book Dust again, because they were a popular tag team and they were funny and they were kind of helped get Booker T over to what was going to come for him next year.
And it's also comical to note that every single one of those final four are still in wrestling today. I mean, Booker T has his school that he's working a lot with, the reality of wrestling. And then you have the other three are still wrestling for promotions today. So, I mean, that just shows you what, the talent in the ring it transcends the generation, considering this was 19 years ago.
Yeah, you have William Regal, who, is the commissioner on NXT, essentially de facto. And, you have Lance Storm, who's still training in Canada, who Jericho says that if he ever has the last match, it's against Lance Storm. If that's not respect for your wrestling ability, then I don't know what it is. I mean, you have Chris Jericho, who's arguably on everyone's Mount Rushmore somewhere, saying, if I have a last match against Lance Storm, that shows respect for Lance Storm. Mm-hmm. So like you said, they're underrated. And, I enjoyed it. And then I thought it was kind of funny that we saw two Impact guys bookend. We had D'Lo Brown in the Heat match, and then we had a Josh Matthews. Remember they had that weird segment with Brock Lesnar? It was like indecisive. I'm like, oh, and he's like, I'll make an Impact. It's the only reason I remember that promo, because I'm like, Impact. He's an Impact.
That's a good point. But yeah, definitely, I think this was a perfect way to start the show off. And like you said, once they get it narrowed down to the two teams of Booker T and Goldust and Jericho and Christian, it essentially became a 10-minute regular tag match, and the match flowed really well. There was a lot of, like you said, false finish type moves, teasing the DQ or the, cheap way to win. There was a lot of good storytelling, so that made the match very entertaining. There was also that spot with the Dudley Boys. I can't remember. It was Bubba Ray and somebody that they did the was up spot.
Oh, they're doing it together and they're opposite teams. Yeah,
I can't remember who it was. I don't remember if it was. I want to say Booker T, but I'm not 100% sure. I watched this show in sections, and I watched this on Tuesday. So I watched like the first half on Tuesday, so it's not like fresh in my mind. But I thought that I should have wrote it down. I didn't, but I thought that was also cool that they kind of in the time they had in the match, they also kind of fit in that shtick of the Dudley Boys. So, but yeah, I mean, all in all, a very good way to start the show, I think. And then moving on, the next match was a singles match where you had in just over 7 minutes, the Rated R superstar, or soon to be Rated R superstar, Edge defeated A-Train, Matt Bloom, whatever you want to call him, Prince Albert, Tensai, whatever. And like I said, just over 7 minutes. This match wasn't, on paper, it was an iffy match in my head, but it actually really wasn't bad. Another pretty solid match, and I think that that Albert might be a little underrated as well for what he could do in the ring, especially for a bigger guy.
Well, I think Albert's problem is always just his gimmicks. I mean, he came in as like a weird BDSM tattoo artist to being with Test in a tag team to, then they even talked about, this pay-per-view that he's now A-Train. So like they couldn't just kept him as Albert and just had him be like a muscle. They tried too hard to make these weird gimmicks for him. This one he did well with, because I mean, A-Train is the stupidest name for a gimmick, but he made it look powerful. Like, the Baldo bomb, that cool double like sit down choke slam, that like thing where he does the train wreck, I think it's called, where he like drops him on the shoulders. He made the moves look devastating. Then you have Edge, who's really quick, so that kind of helps because you have the speed versus the brute. So it's kind of like a David versus Goliath. And like you said, this was Edge's big push coming, so this helped elevate Edge. And I know no one didn't really end with a finish, but it was a good match that kind of showed the essentially the heel A-Train, the dominant force, and then the cocky kid Edge. So it was good storytelling, and the wrestling wasn't terrible. Just like you said, on paper, it's just not very exciting because it's A-Train.
Well, and not only that, you think of like pre-Rated R superstar Edge, and honestly, his single run like before that was just kind of meh. Like, no offense to Edge, it just, before he became the Rated R superstar, everything he did before that was just kind of like almost like Christian's career, just meh. It was just blah. It was okay, but like nobody remembers any of that. Like, nobody's like, hey, you remember when Edge did this back in 2001? It's like, no. No offense. It's just, but if you ask somebody that's a wrestling fan, hey, remember that time that Edge and Lita had sex in the ring? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's one of those things. Like, once, you remember when Edge and Matt Hardy had their thing, and then Edge and Foley, and then Edge and Kane, and like you that's the stuff you remember. Edge and Undertaker, like stuff like that, but you don't remember stuff before that, like when he first branched off on his own, which is also why Christian ended up with Chris Jericho, because he had no traction either at the time.
And then, Chris Jericho kind of got stalled down too. That was the problem from 2002 to probably about 2007-ish. They kind of suffered with a lot of hot and cold pushes on people. It's just because they just couldn't find, because you had Stone Cold and The Rock basically bouncing. You had Brock Lesnar, who became the next big thing, and then he bounced. You had Goldberg, who bounced. So you pretty much had Triple H, Shawn Michaels carrying the company on their back with an up-and-coming John Cena. So they were trying to find that next upper mid-carder. So like
sprinkle in a little bit of Randy Orton.
And,
like you said, that's, I mean, pretty much all they had for a 4-year stretch probably.
But I think so. That's why, like you said, I think his run wasn't as memorable, because they were just trying to what sticks. Because remember, Randy Orton, when he came in, had that Randy News Network thing that was god awful. When he was injured. So they did these kind of things. But what I liked was that Rob Zombie, Never Gonna Stop Me, probably one of the best entrance musics he's ever had. It's like, they should have just paid for the rights for that, because that song is Edge.
and he never even had it for that long. Like, that's the other thing too. Like, he didn't have it for this. Like, I mean, you think of Randy Orton, like, how long has he had the Voices theme? Like, he's had that forever. Like, in my head, it's like he had that forever. And you think of Edge going from the, you think you know me, just music instrumental, and then you think of the Rob Zombie, and then you think of the On This Day. Like it's so
Right.
you don't. There's that gap in time where you just don't appreciate the Rob Zombie theme that much because he didn't have it for that long, and like you said, it was a great theme. Just like in this show, you have Batista before he had Saliva. Like in my head, I don't think of the theme he had. I think of the Saliva theme. Like that's just.
You can definitely tell it had elements to that theme though. Like it was like you could hear do do
Yeah.
without jumping ahead, but I don't want to jump ahead too much. But yeah, that's another thing. 2002, there were some bangers themes. You had Limp Bizkit. I don't care. You can make fun of me. I was a Limp Bizkit mark. So you have Limp Bizkit Roland for the energy. I know you are too. And then you have Saliva. You have all these great bits. That was the best way to incorporate corporate music was, have these bits, and then they would actually do the live performance. Like, who doesn't remember Motorhead, doing Triple H? I mean, that wasn't great, but who doesn't, still.
Well, the time that Limp Bizkit did the live, entrance for the Undertaker, I remember that like it was yesterday. I've shared with you on TikTok some of the videos of mashups. I really would love to see someone mash up that theme with how Fred Durst looks now. Like just because he looks like friggin' Elton John now. He looks so weird, and he still sounds the same.
I'm still standing here, rolling.
I would love for them to mash up like from friggin' the shows he had this summer, like live. Have him jamming out with his purple glasses and stuff to mash it up for the Undertaker coming out. It would just be hilarious. But
Rocket Man, rolling.
See, this is what happened when Tim's not here. There's nobody to keep us on track, and we are just so scatterbrained that like stuff.
A-Train derailed us.
Exactly. Well, let's try to get back on the rails here. A-Train has now passed us by, and the following match, two superstars who are no longer with us, unfortunately. Again, one for one reason that whatever we don't need to discuss it, and then the other one of Eddie Guerrero, who left us too soon. It was Chris Benoit defeating Eddie Guerrero by submission in just under 17 minutes. This match, as advertised, I think when you think of these two superstars, and again, you have to do what you can in your mind to take Chris Benoit, the what would become the murderer essentially, and separate the wrestler from him. And again, I know we talk about that all the time, but just pure wrestling, this Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero match is what you want out of wrestling and storytelling. And they had chemistry because they were good friends. They've competed numerous times against each other, with each other. This is a fantastic match.
No, it was excellent, and I love the modified 4-leaf clover that he does, the El Lasso from El Paso. Like, I love that, when Benoit would lock in the crippler crossface, the expression on Eddie's face of the pain, and they were stiffing each other too. There were some hard hitting shots. I enjoyed this match. This was when I go back and watch Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, matches from back in the day, or you watch matches of other past wrestlers. These are the kind of matches you want to watch. So, if you want to see a good Eddie Guerrero match, this is one to watch. And like Roland said, obviously the elephant in the room of Chris Benoit, but sometimes we do have to separate reality and realize that this was the character he played. You're not cheering on the guy. You're not cheering on the person the character played. Trust me, the reason Dark Side of the Ring exists, there's a lot of shady shit in wrestling. There's been a lot of murders, deaths. There's been a lot of things. Unfortunately, that's because there's humans involved. So the best thing you can do is try to separate yourself the best you can, and try to enjoy what you can.
And to that, I echo that. Like, if you're watching, a Chris Benoit match, you have to realize in your mind that the fans there and you are not cheering for the murderer. You're cheering for the wrestler, like the sports entertainer, not the person that would become what his life ended and what happened with Nancy and Daniel. Like, that that's the thing, is that you can't, and like, as much as WWE wants to erase Chris Benoit from you just can't. There's just no way you can. And it's a fine line, because again, nobody wants to say, oh, I get to watch this. We know what happened to the end of his life and the end of his family's life. It was unfortunate. And again, it seems like every time we bring this up, we just want to let everybody know that some people can't separate the two, and that's fine. Like, if you don't want to watch the matches, that's fine. But I feel like you're missing out. And again, we're not cheering on or condoning murdering your family or what happened there either. So,
And what's hard is there's more than one performer in the ring. So by erasing his history, you're also erasing the history of the people he worked with, which really isn't fair to the people he worked with, because they were doing their job. You know,
right.
And I never would condone anything Chris Mo did. You know, he can, you know, rot for what he did, but it's hard for being wrestling historians, because that's the context of our show, is we dive into wrestling history.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any other history. You can't tell the story of your country without talking about the wars and the war crimes and the horrible things. So unfortunately, you have to talk about those things. So, you know, again, I personally think if you're able to separate it and understand, you know, watch it, this is a good match to watch. If you can't, that's understandable too. We're not disagreeing with you. We're just trying to put out context that it's hard to watch wrestling history, because as we get older, we learn more things, which then kind of dampens history itself. So unfortunately, that's the hard part of going back. You know, sometimes you have to talk about things, but from a wrestling standpoint, it was a great match. And both wrestlers, there's a reason why they were considered the best wrestlers of their era, because of this kind of match.
Well, and like I said, I feel like every time we have a Benoit match, we have to have this like awkward conversation. But I also just want to make sure that people understand that not any of us on this show condone what happened at the end of his life. Like, that's not the point of this, and that we're not, you know, it's, you have to be able, it's like you said, to be able to do the show the way we do, you have to separate the two. You just have to. And it ends up being for a perfect reason. And it gives us this great wrestling match. And like you said, it's not fair to the people that he wrestled with, and to be 100, and this is going to be a bit of a hot take, it's not fair to his career either, because he had a fantastic career before everything that happened. And you have to remember that his in-ring career he gave to his fans is what caused that. So like, you have to remember that he sacrificed a lot, clearly, to entertain us. So like, it's not fair to even try to erase that in my mind, because yes, this happened and whatever, and a lot of the head trauma and stuff he had, obviously, from the wrestling, which is what caused the murder and him, you know, everything else. But he did it for us to entertain us. And unfortunately, the side effect was, you know, we didn't know about the CTE and the head trauma and stuff like we do now. So like you said, it's not fair to the performers he's with to be able to just erase it. Like, I mean, you have that triple threat match with Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Benoit. Like, how do you erase that? You just can't. So, you know, I feel like we've been talking about it long enough, but I just want to do my best to at least point out my thoughts on it. And for the most part, Tim and Mongo echo those sentiments too. I mean, it's again, an unfortunate situation, but it's part of wrestling history. And like Mongo said, that's what we cover. So moving on after this fantastic match was, I mean, this match was two bigger guys. And to be fair, it was a very green Batista with Ric Flair taking on Kane at this point. The very early stages of evolution, very early stages as Batista as.
Sorry, Jindrak.
Yeah. Sorry, Mark Jindrak. You kind of made the cut for a little while there. But you know, this just showed you what Batista would become. And unfortunately, you could tell he was very green. There was a couple of spots that were botched and whatnot during the match. But to be fair, Kane did a very good job of carrying the match and keeping the match on track. And Ric Flair was there to help also guide it. So that helped hide a little bit of it. But Batista would defeat Kane in just over 6.5 minutes. So thankfully, it wasn't too long of a match. But honestly, like I said, there were some botches in there and whatnot, but it honestly was a relatively solid match, all things considered.
What kind of threw me for a loop here is I knew Evolution was right around New Year's 2003, because I remember having that shirt in, you know, my junior year of high school that Pete made late and getting, you know, in trouble for wearing it. So I knew that it was following, and obviously, but in my mind, I've just, I guess, never had the timeline that, holy crap, Batista really was there, like, really early on in the early 2000s. And we worked with, and obviously with OVW and everything, worked with a lot of these, you know, stars. Some people like, I forgot he worked with Kane. You know, I forgot these kind of things. So it's cool to go back because, like you said, he is green. This is when I believe he separated from his Deacon Batista character pretty recently, and was, you know, this was him building up the evolution. So it was a decent match, but Kane was kind of just there as the veteran to kind of make him look good in the match and help put him over. So from storyline wise, it was good. Like Roland said, from a wrestling standpoint, he was greener than cow shit. So I mean, it didn't go over well.
Yeah, like I said, it helped having a veteran like Flair there to help kind of, you know, guide the ship, and then Kane did a fantastic job of keeping the ship on point, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Moving on from that match, we then had probably the only real throwaway on the card, and it's unfortunate when you talk about these three ladies. Victoria was your women's champion. It was a triple threat match between her, Miss Jackie, Jacqueline, and Trish Stratus. This match sucked. I hate to, you know, crap on, you know, women's wrestling and whatnot, but this was also in a time where they were busy doing segments with, you know, Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson's dad and Tori Wilson, and maybe they're having lesbian relations and maybe they're not, and maybe they're getting mid. So like they had no direction for the women's championship, unfortunately, yet. So it's unfair to crap on these three ladies. It really is. It's not their fault. They only got 4 minutes and 28 seconds. That right there is the worst part. They could have very easily been given 8, 9, 10 minutes and actually had a decent match, because all three of these ladies could go. So I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that they had no direction for the division, and unfortunately they paid the price for it.
So here's what pisses me off and pissed me off about it. Like you said, the match sucked because it felt rushed, and it was because it was 4.5 minutes. We had a 15 fucking minute segment of Dawn Marie and Tori Wilson and Tori Wilson's dad that, again, was for episodic television. So something that we crap on TNA for doing, they're doing. So you're at a pay-per-view and you're going to show a video of Dawn Marie, who's engaged to Tori Wilson's father, but in a Poison Ivy twist that everyone and their mother saw coming, she wants to seduce Tori Wilson. So she lures her to a hotel room, and they're most awkward, and I get it. Like 16-year-old Josh is probably like, yeah, this is great. 35-year-old Josh is like, this is super cringy.
Oh, dude. that doesn't even begin to describe it. It's horrible.
It would not age well today.
It doesn't.
The implications of it are very, very illegal in my mind. So like,
and then to top all that off without cutting you off, then Dawn Marie still decides she wants to marry Al Wilson. After all of it.
The fact that this happened to Tori Wilson, I apologize, Tori Wilson, Dawn Marie. I get Dawn Marie had a past doing Cinemax after 9 p.m. If you don't get that reference, just stay up and watch it. But that I feel bad for Tori Wilson, because she was a legitimate wrestler who actually had a decent career. What a crappy storyline for her. And then I know eventually her dad's going to have a heart attack on TV. That's how they get rid of Al, because they continue this story. So this was a time waster. It should have been eliminated for the women triple threat, because I feel like if they had time, it would have been a little bit better. Because Victoria and Trish, you know, she had just got the title off Trish in that hardcore match at Survivor Series. Like, they had a women's hardcore match that was, from my memory, it was pretty decent. And then this match, you throw in Jacqueline, another Hall of Famer, you could have had a great match. But like you said, you got 4.5 minutes, and they had no direction, so it just sucked.
Yeah, it was. And then like you said, you know, you have that spot, and then somewhere in there you have the John Cena spot where he comes out and raps with Bull Buchanan, Bling Bling Buchanan. That's
BB squared.
Yeah. So like there's stuff on there that didn't need to be on the card that you could have very easily had for the live crowd. That like the John Cena thing would have been a cool way to pop the live crowd, but like we don't really need to see it. Like you could have him come out during like a promo package and just like you wouldn't have missed it. Put it that way.
Yeah, this must have been early rapping Cena too, because his raps used to be funny and good. This was just like, okay, like it was no Max Caster.
No, the Acclaimed hadn't arrived. But yeah, it definitely like Mongo said, the cringeworthy stuff with Al Wilson, the love triangle with it, and I say love triangle because that makes it sound like he's trying to sleep with his daughter, but no, it's his fiance that's trying to sleep with his daughter. So
there's this god awful movie out there. I think it's called Wild Thing or something, where it has Nev Campbell and Denise Richards and that creepy actor, I can never remember his name, from Something About Mary. The one who was like the cop, Matthew. But anyway, so the whole movie, it reminds me of that movie where it's just this, you have like the two daughters in love, but then the husband, it's just, it makes your head hurt. It's clearly Vince just trying to get himself to laugh and get himself to enjoy something, because again, the implications are very illegal. It just didn't belong in the pay-per-view. I'm sorry, again, like I said last week, if I'm paying $50 for a pay-per-view, I don't want to watch something that's on Raw. I want to watch wrestling matches, because that was the draw. That's the draw of any pay-per-view for me. It's wrestling. It's less filler. It's more wrestling. I don't need 35 minutes of filler. That's what Raw and SmackDown are for.
Right. And then, after the triple threat match, you then have the singles match for the WWE Championship with the champion, the Big Show, facing Kurt Angle. And I don't know about you, and we know this would lead to Kurt Angle facing Brock at WrestleMania in 2003, so we know where they're going. But like, I feel like the Big Show was like unnecessarily in this. Like, I feel like Big Show was like Al Wilson. Like he didn't need to be in this love triangle. Like it didn't.
I don't understand it, because the whole angle is basically Brock Lesnar was screwed over by Paul Heyman, and that's the only reason why Big Show got it, because Big Show basically cheated to win, and then it was supposed to be Kurt Angle, getting the title back, because they're going to eventually fight at WrestleMania 18 where Brock Lesnar kills himself with a shooting star press. So I don't understand the logic. This is a filler match. Like, the poor Big Show was a transitional champion. He was never meant to be the champion. It was a way to take the title off Brock for whatever reason, to give to Angle, to then give back to Brock. So it's hot potatoing. Like we talk about, I don't care for it, so I don't understand it. And the match sucked. Like, I mean, I feel bad for Kurt Angle, because there's only so much you can do with Big Show, and there was just too much shenanigans at the end.
Well, and not only that, this was like fat, out of shape Big Show too. Like, this wasn't even like peak performance in shape. This was wearing jeans to the ring because he was out of shape. Big Show. This was, mailed it in Big Show is what I'll call it. And, even he would admit later on in his career that, during interviews, that there was a time where he just didn't care enough to take care of his body and do what he had to do. And this was, you could tell he was out of shape, was even slower than normal. And it showed, because Kurt Angle's out there trying to essentially wrestle a bull. It was a styles clash. Angle's doing, like you said, Mongo, Angle's doing everything he can to try to put on a decent match. And to me, the best part of the whole match was that Paul Heyman was dead for like 2/3 of the match. he gets hit with Angle, and he ends up on the outside. And then, yeah, like you said, and A-Train comes out for some reason and hits that vertebraker type backbreaker move. Like, it's just whatever the hell you said it was called. I don't even remember.
Trainwreck.
Yeah, thank you.
Which was what this match was.
Yeah, ironically. Well, and the best part is I called. I was actually watching it earlier tonight, and Hunter was still here, and I was watching it with him. And as soon as the referee got that bump, I'm like, oh, it's about time for Heyman to come back to life. And then boom, chair goes in there. And isn't it ironic that Heyman throws a chair in the middle, almost like he did with the belt for Brock and Roman? Did you catch that? He threw the chair almost dead in the middle of Kurt Angle and Big Show, like he did with the belt for Roman and Brock. Like, it was eerily similar.
And then he gets, if you haven't watched SmackDown, spoiler, last night he got, Superman punch, with the most awful looking Superman punch ever, because Heyman is not a wrestler. So like, Roman missed by like 5 miles, so he actually clocked Heyman, and Heyman stumbles over just for Brock to come out. And and it's because I just watched this, earlier, so it's like, I feel like I've seen this before. So they're doing this storyline again right now, and if you go back to one of our first teen episodes, I believe it's Lockdown, we were talking about it before WrestleMania, and Roland's like, they're going to do the Miss Elizabeth thing with Paul Heyman. Watch. So Roland called this like 8 months, probably the only long-term storyline they're doing, like 8 months ago. And it's probably because this was in the subcockles of our memory. This was burned in our memory.
I remember saying it was, like custody of Paul Heyman. It would be like, it was like the Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio ladder match for custody of Dominic Mysterio. It was Paul Heyman on a pole, and you had to, the winner gets Paul, and yeah. So like now, what's going to happen essentially in my mind is that this is all a swerve to get Heyman to be trusted by Brock, only to turn on him. Like, that's how I think this is going to go. I could be wrong. I don't know, but it seems like that's the way they're like leading.
Oh no, don't worry. They're setting up for a trilogy of matches, is the rumor in the dirt sheets.
Yeah,
because we haven't seen that WrestleMania 32 and 34, so we haven't seen these matches. And I was at WrestleMania 34 Beach Ball Mania. It was that was the most booed match I've ever been in my life, because that's the kind of chemistry these two have, and it's going to be the same thing.
I think the fans are a little more invested this time around because they're flip-flopped, so that helps. But you can only get so much traction out of that.
Right, you can't kill it with 3 straight matches.
No, and that's the other thing, is that you already had one of the matches in Saudi. Like, you've already given one of the matches away. Like, no offense, the match was given away to a promoter, a prince in India. Like, it's just it's gone. So like, that match is already gone, and now you have, the idea of having, trilogy or whatever they're going to do, whether it ends up being the Rumble and WrestleMania or WrestleMania and SummerSlam. Like, they're drawing this out clearly. Now, does The Rock show up somewhere in here? Again, rumors are maybe not. Who knows? We don't know where they're going. But who would think in 2021 going into 2022 that the fans would be cheering Brock Lesnar, which is what's happening. It's kind of weird. It really is, because for some reason Brock now looks like a normal person. Like, he just looks like a farmer from, Minnesota.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah. So, like, who would have thought that, for one? And then who would have thought that you would need The Rock to show up to then save what's left of the Brock Roman thing, depending on which way they go, if that happens. So I don't know which way they're going, but
so
yeah.
I have an analogy I adopted a few years ago. I'm doing it for the Matrix movie, and I'm doing it for WWE constantly. I set the bar incredibly fucking low, so I can't be disappointed. So like, I literally HBO Max deleted my comment under the Matrix post. I'm like, I can't wait to be disappointed by this movie. Because that's how you feel about WWE. Like, can't wait to be disappointed about the storyline. Because, and I'm not trying to, again, it's not crap on WWE, but it's just set the bar low. Because then when they do something that's unexpected, you're like, okay, I'm invested. Because they are shown they're capable of doing it. Like, going back to Armageddon, this is, I know it's 19 years ago, but you did it. You had the talent. You made match make sense. We're going to the main event, which I'll let you talk about who it is. But you showed you can do long-term storyline with a payoff.
Yeah. Well, and good segue, leading up to the main event, you have what would be, like you said, it essentially was the summer and fall of Triple H and Shawn Michaels. They, from their match at SummerSlam to the Elimination Chamber to this 2 out of 3 falls, 3 out of whatever. Yeah, good job. 2 out of 3 falls match. I looked quick and saw 3 stages of hell and turned it into 3 out of whatever. Yeah, so this was a 2 out of 3 falls match, 3 stages of hell, where the first fall was a street fight, the second fall was a steel cage match, and then the third fall, again, if necessary, because they had to throw that in there 100 fucking times. if necessary, the third fall would be a ladder match.
But see, back then, I liked that they kind of did that, because when you first watch this, it was smart to have the ladder as the third one, because what kills me nowadays when they do a 3 stages of hell match in any company is they're like, in the third match, if necessary, is a cage match. And then you look above the ring and there's a cage hanging above it. You're like, clearly this is going to the third fall. This one, I get why they did it, because they were trying to, is it going to be Triple H scoring 2 straight falls? Is HBK going to score 2 straight falls? So I get why they did it.
Is Ric Flair going to be kicked out of ringside up from a street fight, but then only to show up for the steel cage match?
It's because he had to bleed. It was Ric Flair. He had to bleed.
Well, and he had to set the tables up for Shawn Michaels to fall on. But those were the only. So the first fall ends up being won by Triple H. The street fight which really the street fight had the longest period of time match-wise. That was won by Triple H hitting a pedigree. Then you have the second fall, the steel cage match, being won by Shawn Michaels with a crossbody off the top of the cage through the table for the second fall. So now guess what? It's tied, and we're going to the magical third fall of the ladder match. And
it was necessary.
it became necessary. I think of I think in the movie Dodgeball, whenever I think of necessary, when Patch is, is it necessary to drink my own urine? No, but it's sterile and I like the taste. That's what I think of when I think of the necessary. Anyways, again, sorry, Tim, we're way off topic. But
and sorry, Tim, we talked about a movie.
Yeah, I don't even know. Has he seen Dodgeball? I don't know. We found out that he had.
He better be watching Home Alone 1 and 2. That was his assignment.
Well, maybe that's why he isn't here today. He didn't want to be embarrassed by not watching it. Anyhow, and then you have actually it was relatively quick how quick the ladder match portion ended. But you have Triple H essentially murdering Shawn Michaels through the. Do you notice when Shawn went through the tables, that one table didn't break, and he's like doing push-ups on it to make sure like the table legs don't hit him in the face and stuff?
Yeah, he was like Ultimate Warrior pressing that thing right off his face. I know. So I made Emily watch this match because I knew she hadn't seen this match, and she noticed that too. That this, he goes to the tables and he instantly shoves the table up. But I also noticed in the street fight how dumb fans are. So there's a really cool spot where Triple H lights the barbed wire on fire. It's a barbed wire 2x4, and he's walking over Shawn. Shawn hits him, and the barbed wire falls, and it rolls towards the guardrail. And you have these idiot fans leaning over the guardrail with their face towards the fire. And Shawn Michaels has to crawl super quick and grab it to use it, because this fan, if he had any longer, probably would have burnt his face off. Because I don't know what he was doing, but it was like, ooh, fire. Like, yes, it's real.
And then Vince would have stood up and be like, "That's got to be Kane. He caught on fire." But yeah, no, I like the storytelling in this too, because during that portion, they were trying to say that Triple H had a heart, and he wasn't going to hit him, and then he lights the damn thing on fire and tries to hit him with it. So, like you said, long term. We both can't say that today. Long-term storytelling at its finest. And again, WWE is doing that to a T right now with Roman and Brock and whatever, and they're proving that they can still do it and the formula works. It's just you have to do it right. You can't rush it. You can't, that's the biggest thing that we noticed with AEW recently with Punk and Kingston. They rushed the hell out of that because they needed the match for the show. Now this time around they have Punk and MJF, and they are letting that thing burn, which is how you should do it. So it just goes to show you that when you have the right story and the right people involved, that it can be done, and that as long as you don't rush it, you can tell a great story.
And that's the thing. I feel like the writers need to invest in more than just a couple of wrestlers. Multiple feuds. That's what it's. Make the feuds meaningful. Don't be like, remember in 1999, we both went to the same elementary school class, and I wanted those brownies, but Alexa, you bought the brownies first. I remembered and trained to be a WWE super. No, don't make up some phony path. Like, make it a believable story, and tell it. This was the perfect story. Triple H comes back in the Rumble after a torn quad in 2002. Shawn Michaels returns in the summer after being absent, after there's little issues after the commissioner. So he's come back, and I'm basically announcing I'm coming back to wrestle, which was a huge shock. So you have these two megastars returning. They're friends. They tease the DX. They tease that Triple H is going to join NWO. I remember that was the big plan, was he was going to join the NWO, but then Kevin Nash blew his quad out. So NWO kind of faltered. So then one of the most iconic things I'll always remember from my childhood is Shawn Michaels and Triple H staying in the ring, and they're reuniting DX. They're getting ready, and then Triple H just turns around and kicks him square in the nuts. He gets air on that pedigree. He pedigree Shawn Michaels. And
one of the most awkward pedigrees you'll ever see.
Yep.
Too. Like Shawn, it's almost like Shawn forgot how to take it, because he'd been out of the ring for so long. But yeah, and then you also have the attack on Shawn Michaels, backstage, which led to that match when,
You're damn right it was me. Yep.
yeah, you have the iconic, the police gave me footage and it's grainy, and then you have the iconic moment of Shawn going, "It was you, Hunter."
Yep.
And the storytelling was great. And how do you not get invested in that as a fan?
And I was a huge DX mark. You were a huge DX mark, and that's work. They were one of the more over factions. You're seeing the founding fathers fight. You're seeing real life brothers fight, and they had a lot of backstage issues in 2001 when Shawn had his relapse and everything. Hunter trusted him. He felt like he was buried. He felt like he did the dirty work for the clique. So this was, some bad blood to it. They made up, but you could feel the real tension if it made it believable. It made it. Wrestling's work, but you felt like these two wanted to rip each other's head off. And that when it came down to the Elimination Chamber match at, the previous month at Survivor Series with the ugliest brown pants ever, you had Hunter and Shawn beat the living shit out of each other, and you knew this was coming. So that's all you need to do is make it mean something. And like the Roman and Brock storyline, you can make it mean something. Don't stretch it out. This was great because they hadn't really had their one-on-one match in SummerSlam. This was a way to, finish it. Like, Shawn got the title from Triple H. Triple H wanted his title back. What better way to finish it? Fine. We'll have a 2 out of 3 falls. See who the better man is. You didn't want to be my manager? Fine. Then I'm going to beat you. And then Triple H did. And this is what elevated Triple H. This is what pushed him to mega stardom. And then HBK is going to fight Jericho Mania. So it's not like he didn't do anything. He had the greatest run of his career.
Well, and this is what it would also lead to the rise of Batista. Because if Triple H wasn't on that level, then Batista wouldn't have had anything to go up to. So
this worked. This is how they built new stars. So, for all the fodder, Vince always says, we can't build new stars. You don't give people a chance. You've shown you can do it. You have to let the people shine through. Give them storylines, because if you're just giving them crap storylines, we're not going to be invested. If the fans aren't invested, they're not going to care about the character. This is the kind of match, like, honestly, I could talk about this match more than anything on the card. We say it all the time, but it's 100% true for this match. If you only watch one thing on Armageddon 02, watch the 3 Stages of Hell match. And honestly, go back and watch the rest of their matches, because 2002 Triple H HBK was one of the best feuds in wrestling.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this show was a 7. For me, I think it was one of the higher shows we've seen, all told. There was definitely some stuff that brought it down a little bit, as we discussed, but I think this is a very solid card from start to finish.
I would agree that. I would definitely give it a 7 as well. I think it was a solid show. Like you said, it had some cringe and some clunkiness, but from a wrestling standpoint and from storyline standpoints, and the fact that they had a brand split pay-per-view, they did it well. I mean, SmackDown seemed to have the better matches besides the last match, but they did it well, because usually in the brand split era, it got really rough, but they did a good job. And I mean, it's worth a watch. Just be warned. Skip the Don Murray segment. You're not going to want to watch it. I mean, if you're a 13-year-old kid or boy, maybe you're going to want to watch it. But if you're a grown adult, it's cringy.
It's pretty bad. So that's our recap on Armageddon 2002. Again, 19-year-old show that still holds up today, in my opinion. I think, like I said, it's one of the better shows from start to finish that we've watched. And we're on episode 108, and I think there's just a handful of shows that were better than this as of right now, as a whole.
No, I agree. It's hard too, because we don't just crap on WWE. We praise them, because that's the thing. We're wrestling fans, and this is the kind of pay-per-view that reminds me why I'm a wrestling fan. This is why I get sad when WWE, it doesn't hit its potential, because this shows they have and they can. And honestly, right now with all the wrestling competition, I want it to be the best, because right now we have so many ways to watch wrestling. Put some good, the more content, you put out there, the more we're going to invest in, because wrestling is something that connects a lot of people. And it's very timeless. I mean, even if you go back to the 1990s to now, you can find something you like.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree. Looking forward to next week, where hopefully we'll have Tim back and he can steer the ship, and we may not go off in the weeds as much as we did this episode. For episode 109, we're going to go back to Starrcade 1997, which took place on December 28th, 1997. The infamous Hogan Sting main event that they were building up to for what felt like forever. And there's also some good, there's some really good names on this show and on this card. and starting off with a match of Eddie Guerrero against Dean Malenko. So, Chris Benoit again on this show, Buff Bagwell, Luger, Diamond Dallas Page, Kurt Hennig. We even get to see Larry Zbyszko face Eric Bischoff with Bret Hart as a special guest referee. So it should be an interesting show to go back and watch from 1997.
How the fuck did they try to keep Larry Zbyszko relevant for 8 years?
Well, and then you fast forward to TNA. And
that's what I'm saying.
It just, I don't know.
Oh, man, no. But in all honesty, 96, 97, 98 WCW, that's when I was a huge WCW marker in that era. I watched all the Nitros, so it's going to be fun to relive this one because I'm sure I ordered this one because I remember the main event of Sting Hogan. So I'm sure I ordered it, so it's going to be great to deep dive. I don't remember if this is one that we lost power on. We had to get a refund, but there was a pay-per-view where we lost power and had to get a refund, and it was like pulling teeth. So I wonder if this is one, and they ended up like only offering us to get the replay, and I remember being so mad because I stayed up like 1 a.m. to finish the pay-per-view.
Yeah, they at least made good on it, but yeah, it was definitely a cluster. And if Tim doesn't like it, show up to the next show, Timothy.
We could have done WCW 2000.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. Like I said, sometimes life gets in the way, and as long as we have, like I said, it might be a boring show, but even if there's only one of us, we will try to put out a show every week for you guys. Again, we're like Mongo's been saying, we are dangerously close to hitting our goals for the year, which is insane for downloads and stuff. So if you guys could keep doing that, we'd appreciate it. Keep spreading the word. Mongo's a better hype man for where to go and what to do than I am, but I just figured I would throw that out there that we're getting pretty darn close, but we're running out of weeks.
So to make you feel better, we actually hit the goal.
Oh, we did?
So yes.
Nice.
So we surpassed it by about 50 plus downloads. So
nice.
I had asked people to get out there to try to get us 50. You guys gave us 110, so I appreciate that. So yeah, we hit the goal, but definitely, keep searching for us, www.PAP in your app store. Follow us on our socials, www.PAP podcast. Our average listeners are going up. You guys seem to be liking the show. We try. Tim, you got to come back because if it's just us, they're going to think they're confused. So we need you because we are the three amigos. I think together three of us put on a good show. We appreciate the feedback and you guys listening. We're glad to see it grow. And that's why we try to do new things and try to do remixes or, try to bring you a new episode because there's nothing worse as a fan of other podcasts when you're like, oh, I can't wait for the new episode this week. And you're like, oh, it's just a retelling of an episode from like 6 months ago. Well, sometimes you binge a bunch of episodes, so you might just listen to that episode.
Right. So you're saying we're closer to like 25, 60 right now? It's probably about the number. Is that what you're saying? Somewhere in that range?
It looked like it was in that range from last I checked.
Right.
I hadn't checked this morning, but that was as of last night.
So going off of the latest data that you have, let's try to get to 2,800. Let's see if we can get there. Let's try to get another 250 or so, give or take, in the last couple weeks of the year. Let's see if we can pull that off. We should be able to smash that if we did 110 last week. So hopefully, let's shoot for the outside goal of 3,000, but the more realistic goal of 2,800. And if we can get somewhere in between there, I'll be tickled.
Right on.
So yeah, that going forward, episode 109 next week. Hopefully Tim makes his triumphant return. It'll be Starrcade 1997. We want to wish everybody a happy holidays. I know that we'll have our next show will be on Christmas when it drops, Christmas Day. So from all of us at Wrestling with Wrestling Past and Present, have a safe and happy holiday. Enjoy time with your family. Life is, as we've seen through different examples, life is too short sometimes. So cherish the time you have with your loved ones and enjoy the holidays.
You said it exactly how I'm thinking, and enjoy the holidays, spend time. We're glad you could spend some time with us to get a laugh or listen. Make sure you're being out there in your community too. This is a rough time for a lot of people, so just be nice to each other. That's the best gift you can give to everyone this year. Smile at someone, be genuine. Use your manners. The little things go a long way. Just. I'm not trying to be preachy or anything like that, but life's too short to be a dick. Life's too short. Just enjoy it. My grandfather, I know it's a cliche. He used to always just say, there's no point in being sad. It takes more energy. So, if you can, try to be as happy as you can be and enjoy what you can.
And while you're spending all that time with your loved ones and friends, share our show with them.
Exactly.
Give the gift of WWWPAP. Give the gift.
And we're free. We don't make you listen to 19, 20 ads every time you listen to us.
Drink it in, man. Give the gift. And yeah, so again, happy holidays to everybody. You know, everybody has safe travels, as you know, enjoys their time with family and loved ones. And until next week, I am Roland Fulis.
And I'm Mongo.
And this has been Wrestling with Wrestling's Past and Present. Tim, come back. Please come back.
I hope you're all having a nice day.